Dearest viewer, this confession is a bit difficult for me to say, but I feel like it's important for me to get it out there. There is something I've been carrying inside of myself for some time now, and I now feel ready to come to you with it. I am lain gender, which means that I enjoy Serial Experiments Lain. Stylized as Serial Experiments Lain is a Japanese anime television series created and co-produced by Yasuyuki Ueda, written by Chiaki J. Konaka, and directed by Ryutaro Nakamura. Animated at Triangle staff and featuring original character designs by Yoshitoshi Abe, the series was broadcasted 13 episodes on TV Tokyo and its affiliates from July to September 1998. I know this is a bit difficult for you to understand at first, and it may be very new to you, but it is something I have known for a long time. I trust you with this information about who I am, and I would like in return if you start calling me by my chosen name, Irukawa Lain. Alright, so Serial Experiments Lain is a show on these corners of the internet that really needs no introduction. It's one of those cult classic shows, but based off where I hang around, it seems like the show to be into. You don't really see it as much with like Evangelion anymore, or at least like maybe before it was more of a thing, but especially these days, like Serial Experiments Lain is fucking everywhere. I see it in the sad Lain avatars. I see it in the iconography of like certain artists, and it's like music artists and whatnot. It's like all over the atmospheric drum and bass and breakcore scene these days, it seems. Everywhere I turn, I see Irukawa Lain. As prophetic as the show initially was, I don't think it was necessarily going to be brought to these lengths, where like everywhere you go, you see a little bit of Lain everywhere. I think that's more like the fans doing it, perhaps not intentionally, but nevertheless, you know, making that part come true about the show, which is kind of cool. The reason I bring that up is because, like, my own anime watching career, I have like a top 10, which are shows that I perceive to be those that are the most important to me, and perhaps most representative of who I am as an anime fan. And those generally have been static, well, at least the top 5 have been relatively static for a number of years at this point. The ones that shift are 6 through 10, give or take. However, the ones that are usually a bit more in flux, or perhaps the ones that are more unknown simply because Mal only allows a top 10, which I think is a good thing. But in the corner of my mind, I have like a top 15 or a top 20. And the thing is that anime from 11 to 15 are shows that I think about frequently, but don't necessarily, like, you know, advertise a lot as myself being a huge fan of, for one reason or another, mostly just because, like, I don't have a chance to do so. But a couple of them are just like, these are shows that I am really, really passionate about, and I suppose it can be described as how Digibro After Dark once said, my other favorite anime. So like a couple of these would be like Kaiji, Kino no Tabi, and of course Serial Experiments Lain would be up there in like my top 15. Those are a bit more like of a serious show, which aren't necessarily like a lot of the other ones, but it is a different aspect of myself. I can be your angel or your devil, you know. But Lain in particular is kind of a curious case, since, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of like the internet's worst kept secret. Everywhere you go, you're gonna see a Lain fag, bearsuit Lain avatar, or sad Lain avatar. And if you see one of those people, there's a very high likelihood that they have a ThinkPad, they listen to breakcore, very most likely listen to Sewer Slut at one point, like anime, hang around the internet for a very long time, and are chronically nostalgic about the past, and I mean generally are into computers, specifically Linux. It's almost like a stereotype at this point of people who are like into Lain. They fit a certain character, I suppose. And ultimately, I guess one of the reasons why I don't talk about Lain so much or advertise it, well, I guess that's twofold. The first is that superficially, I don't want to be associated with Lain fags in particular, because I kind of feel like it's a cliche. Like, I look at the things that I'm into and I check basically all those boxes, and I don't want to necessarily go with the grain, since I'm more of a, you know, like a Pars goes his own way, like literally MGTOW. But I mean, that's like a stupid reason. But like, I guess another reason why I don't like to advertise that a lot, or perhaps write about it in blogs, is because I feel like Lain is one of those shows that I really enjoy, but I can't really explain it well. It's an interesting experience, because I don't, even after watching it 3 times, I don't really know that I've understood it. And I guess the reason why I wanted to even ramble about Lain in the first place was because the other day I was just like looking on 4chan at different images on the C board, which I do frequently, and I see like a Lain thread, which there usually are a lot, and I sometimes poke my head into it and save a couple Lain pics, because Lain art is usually pretty nice. Or at least very based and comfy, you know. And I'm in there and I'm looking at the pictures and I'm like, shit, man, I'm just thinking about Serial Experiments Lain and remembering how fucking good the show was and how much I want to rewatch it. And that's a symptom of like a lot of these shows in my 11 to 15, that they are things that I like to think about a lot, or I find myself longing to rewatch, and perhaps just one or two rewatches is not enough. Basically every other anime is a show that I could maybe watch it once and I'm done with it, and maybe once is too many times. What starts to characterize the show as a favorite for me is a show that upon finishing it, would I be willing to restart watching it from episode 1? And Serial Experiments Lain is one of those shows. Same thing with like Kino no Tabi, Kaiji. It's a show that's somewhat timeless, and even after watching it 3 times, like I said, I still feel like there's a lot that I'm missing, and still a lot beneath the surface. And even if I do gather everything from the show, I can just continue returning to it simply because like of what it presents. It's something that I find myself thinking about frequently, in much the same way that I do with Origairu. I would consider both shows to be one of those brain worms, at least for me, because Origairu, when I think about people and like I think about relationships between people, how I perceive myself and like the different type of social structures, I think about Origairu, and I think about like what it taught me and also what it reflected, and it also helps me understand reality a little bit better. Lain is one of those shows that doesn't necessarily like bind itself to one idea specifically for myself, but like I find myself thinking about it. Like whenever I open up a terminal or something, I'm like, damn, Serial Experiments Lain literally happening right here. Or I look under my desk and I see a rat's nest of cables and I think about Lain. It's just always ever present there. But it's something that, because of the cliches, because of the stereotypes, it's kind of difficult to reckon with, at least for me, because I'm coming from someone who is a bit of a hipster when it comes to those things. And by the way, is that word even used anymore? I don't know, but I'll use it anyways, because it succinctly describes what I'm trying to get after, other than saying that I'm a contrarian, which isn't necessarily always accurate. But I say I'm a hipster because whenever there's popular thing, I always feel a bit of a pushback to find excuses to not like it or to feel differently about the rest of the crowd, which is because I don't like to conform. I don't want to feel like I'm a part of something. I feel better when I'm in solitude and I have to reckon with everybody else's idiosyncrasies. But Lain is a bit interesting since it's not necessarily popular and a lot of people don't know about it. Because like within the general anime community, like, you know, like your average watcher, your casual anime fan might have heard about it in the same sentence as someone else mentions Evangelion, but they don't necessarily go to watch it themselves because it's a pretty dense show. It's something that really only appeals to a fragment of the overall anime watching community. That isn't to say that someone who isn't like into computers and shit can't enjoy Lain, but I just feel like the people who are already predisposed to those things will find a bit more to enjoy, at least from an aesthetic purpose, and they will be more inclined to take in the ideas and take the show a bit more seriously than someone who isn't, and they have that pushback in them. So I guess that's kind of the long and short of it, that I do really love Lain. It's a show that I think about a lot. Yoshitoshi Abe is a character designer that I'm quite fond of, not simply because of Lain, but also like, you know, Technolize, NHK Nyokoso, those kind of things. And I'm probably going to end up rewatching the show. Like I just think about it and I'm like, damn, it was truly a trailblazer, not only in Denpa fiction, but it's one of those sci-fi shows that I could point to and say this is the reason why I like sci-fi. In much the same way I could look at Blade Runner Original or Blade Runner 2049 or The Matrix and I could be like, this is why I fucking like sci-fi. Lain is up there as one of the best examples of it. Regardless of what other people think, I will still like Lain. It's just difficult to reckon with being a fucking Lain fag.